Let me ask you guys a question. What was Christ thinking about when he decided to walk on water? Why did he even choose this method of transportation? Now, obviously, if we read the Bible enough, we know that Jesus Christ is very strategic, very calculated. Every action that he takes is very purposeful with you in mind. This story can be found in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Now, we know anytime when Jesus Christ was involved in something, there was always something going on around him. And there was always a lot of questions more than answers. Oftentimes, that would be because of the parable he was teaching or the supernatural things that was being caused around him. And some of the things that he did was quite questionable. And this story isn't any different. Now, on the surface, it doesn't look like much of anything else is going on, just of what is being presented to us. Obviously, with Jesus Christ standing on water, and also Peter is also standing and walking on water. But what if I told you that Jesus Christ wanted you to look deeper, and how this can relate to our everyday lives? But first, let's go back to the beginning. Now, Jesus Christ had told his disciples for them to go ahead, and eventually Jesus Christ would meet up with them. And so the disciples got on the boat, but now they were stuck in the middle of the sea, and the waves being tossed and the winds were very strong. Now at this time, Jesus Christ was on a mountain and he was praying, and he was alone. And about the fourth watch, which is 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. for those that don't know, he decided to come down the mountain, and this was going to be the method that he was going to use to get to his disciples. Now I could imagine that he could have chosen any other method, but he decided to use this method in a dire situation that seemed like the lives of the disciples were at risk. Now your disciples are going through something, and you decided that walking underwater was going to be the best method. So if you could imagine this, it's pitch black, it's dark. You're talking about it's the fourth watch, somewhere between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Christ decided to walk on water. What was going on in his mind? Because he had to have known that the disciples were not going to be so receptive. Obviously, the disciples were going to feel how they felt, which was in fear. And in fear, it influenced what they said next when they said, "It is a ghost," because in their mind, it is incomprehensible to have somebody standing on water in pitch black, let alone to stand in the middle of the ocean. And what else could it be? It had to be something supernatural. It had to be something maybe demonic when they said that it is a ghost. Christ had to have known that this was not going to be received well. So he's standing there. Obviously, the disciples get startled. They're in fear. They say it is a ghost. But what does Jesus Christ say? He comforts them and subsides their fear. He said, "Be of good cheer. It is I." Now, perhaps the disciples may have been thinking maybe Jesus Christ is about to give us a teaching, a parable, a sermon, something for this reasoning of him walking on water in the first place. But now we have somebody else that stands up by the name of Peter, which is one of the disciples who was on the same boat, who was just as fearful as the rest of the disciples. And he rises up and he says, "If it is you, command me to come to you." Now, I'm pretty sure the rest of the disciples were not thinking, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you." I'm sure they were like, "Okay, Jesus, we see you standing on water. You want to come on the boat? It's okay. Just come on over." But no, we have Peter standing up saying, "If it is you, command me to come to you." Now, I don't know if it was a doubt thing or something else, because Jesus Christ already comforted his disciples by saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I." But Peter, you always have that one that's always doing the most, who always stands out doing something or saying something. He said, "If it is you, command me to come to you." Now, what happens next is even more questionable, because Jesus Christ says, "Come." Jesus Christ decided to entertain Peter. Now, you could imagine what's going on. Now, the rest of the disciples are looking at him attentively, and Peter is standing up. He steps out, and now they see that he's actually standing on water. And for the first time in history, outside of Jesus Christ, we have a human being standing in the same place as Jesus Christ. But the thing is, is that the rest of the disciples, now this didn't make Peter much more special than the rest of the disciples. Sure, it made him different, it made him unique. It just, Peter has something inside of him at this moment that really caused his attention and really had an influence over his life that made him say, if it is you, command me to come to you. I think he was so influenced about what was going on with Jesus Christ that he sort of wanted the same thing for his life. Again, Peter was nothing more special than the rest of the disciples, but he had this one thing. He was willing to stand where Jesus was standing. At this time, I'm pretty sure everybody is shocked and amazed, and the euphoria levels are so high that nobody at the same time can't believe it, but they actually do believe it because they see what's going on before them. That if you was to tell this story to anybody else, it would be hard for them to believe it unless if you were there. Now the question is, what is the purpose of Jesus Christ standing and walking on water and even letting Peter stand and walk on water? Remember what I said, Jesus Christ is very strategic. And I believe that in this moment, this was all designed for Peter. Now, I'm not saying that the design wasn't for the rest of the disciples, because they sure are experiencing the same thing that that is experiencing, but Peter is experiencing something on a different level. Right now, he's one-on-one with Jesus Christ, doing something that nobody has ever done before that time or even after that time. See, Jesus Christ prior to this already told his disciples that eventually he will meet up with them. But sometimes on your way to Jesus Christ, he has a way of interrupting your life in such a way that it will be influential and impactful upon your life. And he's trying to also teach you something in this moment that has to do and connect with your future. Oftentimes, when Jesus Christ wants to do something in your life, it will make you look like an outcast. It will make you look like you're lonely. It will make you and take you out of the system that has brought you this far. And now, when you're on this one-on-one with Jesus Christ, now it's something in the supernatural level that you can't believe. And that's exactly where he wants to bring you. He wants to bring you outside of something that you're so used to. If you haven't noticed by now, this was designed for Peter. God was so influential in Peter's life that it caused something inside of him that was already inside of him, but God uprooted it and to show Peter, to make him aware of what was inside of him. And that was to say, if it is you, command me to come to you. He had this thing that he wanted to stand where Jesus was. He wanted to step out of the boat, and he wanted to be in the same place that Jesus Christ is. Sometimes God will be so influential in your life that it'll make you look like an outcast. It'll make you feel like you're lonely because you're having this one-on-one connection with Christ that sometimes it'll make you feel like maybe you can't relate to other people because of this relationship that you have with Jesus Christ. And you're trying to bring everybody else with you to have this one-on-one with him because you know how influential he can be over somebody's life, that it could change in a matter of seconds. And knowing that this is going on in Peter's life, and maybe looking in the future, he will know that this moment in his life will forever change him for the better, and this will cause a ripple effect in his life. As a matter of fact, when Jesus Christ said come, and the moment that Peter stood in the same place that Jesus Christ was standing on, you know what Jesus Christ said indirectly to the rest of Peter's life? He told his belief system, he told his environment, he told his family, he told his friends that belief stops right here, because what I'm doing with you right now is something entirely different, and I need to break that structure. I need to break that system, because this needs to be the foundation of your belief. Everything that you was doing over there was surface level. Now where you're standing on is on a deeper level. Even up to this present moment, when Peter stepped out of the boat and he actually stood in the same place that Jesus Christ was standing on, Christ was also trying to tell him that the very thing that got you here, you would never get as far as you could with that as if you would in my name. Only by Jesus Christ's words, Peter was able to come forward. By the command of Jesus Christ and by his word alone, Peter was able to step out of that boat. The boat will represent something that is widely believed and widely known to be used as a tool of transportation and to even float on water. But what happens when God interrupts your life in such a way that he makes you step out of the box, so to speak, and now it makes you stand in a place, in a situation situation, in an environment that was not possible before. See, God often wants to do something in your life, and you have to let him, and oftentimes he will interrupt it in such a way that now it will forever change your life. Once again, what was Jesus Christ thinking? And now, what is Peter even thinking that it would cause them to come out with such a thing? Did Jesus Christ stood and walked on water to bait the fishers of men? Or was it that Peter, when he stepped out of the water, that he would be as a net because this was his calling as a fisher of men? See, we know the many uses of water. We know the water, the world is mainly made of water. Our body's mainly made of water. It's used for agriculture. It's used for medicine. It's used for many things, to quench our thirst, to clean. But one of its uses was not for you and I to stand. And obviously, now we may have technology that may make that possible. But back in those times, it wasn't even a thought. This thing was impossible. Here we have two men now standing on water. Remember, Jesus Christ being so strategic. Now we have the fishers of men who was able to stand on water. Now, it was by the command of Christ that he was able to step out. But what was Peter really standing on? See, Christ was trying to interrupt Peter's life in such a way that when he looks back at this moment, he will always think, this is the moment in my life where my relationship with Christ has been solidified. But Christ had to interrupt his life because he had to let him know, this is how far you will come in my name. Because eventually, look what happened to Peter. He started looking around. He started feeling the strong winds and the waves. And now he began to sink down as a pebble. And what does Jesus Christ does? He comes out immediately, reaches out his arm, and now he says to Peter, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" and pulls him out. Now, can I tell you what was Peter standing on, and why Jesus Christ even chose this method of transportation to even walk and stand on water? Was because when you and I look at the water, we see our own reflection. And Peter was able to stand on water, that he was able to stand on water only because of the image of Christ that was reflecting off the water. And Jesus Christ had to let Peter know that if you're going to do anything in my name, you had to reflect me. So often and so long that we live in a generation that's so occupied with their own image, that we become so occupied that we begin to sink down. And I don't think we realize that we're sinking down. I don't think we're realizing that we're drowning out. See, it was because of Jesus Christ's influence that Peter wanted to step out and stand in the same place that he wanted to stand on. And now we're so preoccupied with building connections, building bridges. Maybe if I surround myself with this particular group of people, that I will get far. Or maybe if I have this feature or that feature, maybe I will get further in my life, because we're all trying to push our name. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that strategy, but it becomes wrong when our own image tries to supersede the image of Christ. Now, I want to be so involved and so influenced and so impacted by Christ that I have this relationship with him, that his image aligns with mine. And now I'm not worried about a connection. I'm not worried about a bridge, because I have this connection with God, that my features actually look like the features of Jesus Christ. So when Jesus comes to Peter and he says, "Oh ye of little faith, why did you even doubt?" You know what Christ was really trying to say to Peter? See, you sunk because you wasn't standing on my image anymore. You started standing on your own image. And when you stand on your own image, I got to let you know something, that when you had this doubt, it has nothing to do with my features. See, doubt doesn't exist in the image of Christ. So when Christ says, "Oh, you little faith, why did you doubt?" he was really telling him, when you doubt, that's not even in my image. That's not even in my feature. So why would you even reflect something that's not even inside of me? We see in Matthew chapter 16, verse 28, that Jesus Christ tells Peter that on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, Hades, shall not prevail. See, Jesus Christ knew in the future that he will be the rock of the church. And if he is not reflecting the rock of the church in the middle of the sea, in the ocean where he was standing with Jesus Christ, he is not seeing eye to eye with the image of Christ. So he needed to put him on a sea level, See, Jesus Christ placed Peter at sea level to make him understand that he was standing on the image of Christ. And if you are going to stand in the image of Christ, then it has to be so vast, so deep, that even when the waves come and it's turbulent and the winds are strong, that you will not be moved by what's going on, because you are so solidified in Christ that if anything even comes my way, it would not make me sink down. It would not make me stray away. But I am so solidified in Jesus Christ because I know who my Redeemer is. This is the one who is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending, the rock of our salvation. So Peter had to understand that moving forward, he had to reflect the rock of salvation, which is Jesus Christ, the chief cornerstone, that if he was to move forward, that he has to be solidified, because eventually he will become the rock of the church. Now, did Peter know this? No, but Jesus Christ had a strategy. He was calculated in a way that he would interrupt Peter's life. He had to make him understand that eventually, when we go into Matthew chapter 16 verse 28, that when Jesus Christ tells him these words, look, by your name I will build this church, which is, your name is the meaning of a rock. Yes, Peter was the fishers of men, but eventually he would become the foundation of the church. And Jesus Christ needed to let him know something, that this is how far you will go in my name, but this is how far you will go if you get in the way of yourself. And sometimes we need to trust, not sometimes, all the times, we need to trust the process. We need to be a willing recipient of the process that Jesus Christ is having us to go through, because it's going to better us, and it's going to be for our purpose, and it's going to be for the legacy, and it's going to be for his will. Now, we need to understand that when Peter was doing all of these things, that Jesus Christ had to strike him right then and there. Now, I could imagine that Jesus Christ pulled a page out of Moses' book in Exodus chapter 17, when God instructed Moses, because the people of Israel was thirsty, so God instructed Moses to strike the rock and that water would come out. It's a strange thing for something to happen like that. It's a strange thing to witness. It's a strange thing to see that water will be coming out of a rock. But Jesus Christ was trying to let Peter know that eventually, if you will become the rock of the church, the foundation of the church, that you cannot just be all hard surface level, all hard on the outside, but I needed to strike you in this moment to make you understand that the water that you were standing on, that when I strike you, living waters has to come out, because you cannot run a church just off a foundation alone. You need to run it with the Holy Spirit. You need to run it with the influence of Jesus Christ. When that living water comes through, what does living water mean? It is moving. It is constantly moving, and that's the only thing you need to be moved by, not by the waves, not by the wind, not by the turbulence, not by the trials and tribulation, but you need to be always moved by the Holy Spirit.